All right. So, hi everyone. It is such a delight to be here. I'm thrilled to be talking, especially to incredibly, insanely bright young people. The last time I had that privilege, I was a teaching assistant in university in Syracuse, and I remember how much I loved that. I'm so glad to be here, and I am very honored that you're going to spend the next hour and a half listening to me, which is a privilege as well. So let me start by telling you who I am. I'm Lakshmi Chaudhary. I grew up in Delhi. I did my undergraduate at Mount Holyoke College, which is a women's college in Massachusetts. And then I spent a long time just hanging out in graduate school in a PhD program, right, in Syracuse. And quite frankly, I didn't have a plan except that I wasn't ready for a real job. But in any case, when I did jump in and I decided I wanted to be, I had to find a career since I realized I didn't want to be a professor, and not everyone is as talented as they with this stuff. So, so I decided I would do journalism because that was kind of my first love. I ran my college newspaper. So I started at Mother Jones, which is a very reputed investigative magazine. So that was my internship. My first job was at Wired.com, Wired News, which is a digital arm of Wired magazine. So it was a really exciting time for me to be there because it was the first .com boom. It was also the first, right? So I learned a lot. Of course, what digital news looked like then, it doesn't even compare to what it's like now, and I'll come to that. And then I actually ended up doing print because I missed reporting. I missed doing deeply reported pieces. So before I left in 2008, I was the chief political writer for a magazine called Nation. And this was the first time that Obama ran for president. So I was doing big stories on Hillary and Obama and all of that, which is all very exciting. And I moved back to India in 2008. I had a young child, so I was kind of on the mummy track. And then I became the co-founder of First Post. So that's really where my entrepreneurial journey starts. That's when I moved from being just an editor and a reporter to being someone who thinks about news as a business and thinks about all the other moving parts, which is product, which is revenue, which is reach, audience, traffic, all the stuff that, we're taught in traditional journalism are bad things for you to think about. But that is the business of news. And you have to, if you want to be in the business of news, you have to be able to make that shift where you think not only of the newsroom, of that story, of your coverage, of that one piece that you're writing, but you're thinking of it as a business, right? And that is a very steep learning curve for me. And I think for two reasons. One is, of course, the business side, but the business side is very intricately connected to the tech, because there is no news today that is not embedded in tech. And technology drives how we produce news, what we produce, how it's consumed, how it reaches people who consume us. So tech is every part of news today. So that was brilliant for me. We did very well. We disrupted the market in very good ways, but also in certain ways that you can see today have not proved very good. By that, I mean, we came in at a time when there was literally, there'd been rediff years and years ago, and there was basically the idea was that standalone digital news media was dead in India. We were not going to have that. We were only going to have the NDTVs and the Times of India's and the Indian Expresses, and they're like legacy brands with their digital arms, right? So we were the first to really say, okay, no, we're going to do a standalone news business, digital news. And we brought in a lot of things that no one was doing here. And that was still early in the West, like live tweeting, live blogging, churning out 150 stories a day, doing all sorts of being a newsroom where your traffic, you have a software called Chartbeat that we used to use, that you basically watched your traffic all the time, because your traffic was everything. It was like whether you indexed on Google or not, on Google News or not, etc. Right? And you kind of lived and died by that. So it was a huge shift, a huge learning curve, and also in a market that I wasn't that familiar with, because I left when I was 18 years old, right? And I really got to know the big mass, at least relatively mass, the English speaking, English consuming news audience. So when I left, we had about 18 million viewees a month, which is a staggering figure back in 2015, and remains a staggering figure even for a lot of standalone digital news sites today. And I quit primarily because, things happen in India. So we had new ownership, and I was there for about a year. Reliance had taken over from Raghav Bell, and they wanted to run it in a different way. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm not coy about it, but I'm happy to talk about it in question answer if you're interested. Anyway, so I left, and because I was one of the few people who actually had editorial and digital news experience, I became the first investment advisor for the IPS Media Foundation, which is a foundation started by Azim Premji, Rohini Nilekani, and a bunch of other incredibly wealthy, generous people, to create an ecosystem for independent media in this country, and digital media, because obviously the costs of publishing are much lower. And so a lot of things that you see today and you take for granted are really incubated by us back then. The Wire, we gave money to Alt News, Live Law. There's so many of these that we funded at a very, very early stage when there was no funding available in this country. And it taught me a lot, because it was my job to get to know many businesses, even ones that we didn't fund, or perhaps that I thought we should have funded, but the board didn't agree. But I got to know and meet so many people. I went all the way from Jharkhand to places in Bombay and Delhi and Kochi, and really get to know people doing, different, amazing, interesting kinds of things, which were not necessarily great businesses, but were certainly in a lot of cases was very good journalism. So that gave me a broader view, and I did that for, I think, 2.5, 3 years. And then finally I felt I was tired of advising everyone. And if I was going to do my own thing, now is the time to start. So my first startup was something called Broadsheet. It brought to India back in 2017, when no one even was thinking of newsletters in this country. A newsletter that's very similar to the Skim. It was for women. Everything was in your email. It was completely text. And the idea was to engage women who tend to be news averse, or not really that engaged in the news around the world, not just in India, to give them a way that they could be really well informed in a very, very easy, painless, but not dumbed down fashion, right? So that was Broadsheet. And it was just an experiment. There were 2 of us, and we did really well. We had about 8,000 subscribers. It was a free newsletter, so we had about 8,000 subscribers very quickly. We got into an incubator called Techstars. But then my founder and I couldn't fundamentally agree on what Broadsheet was. She didn't, we disagreed on whether it was a media business or not a media business. So we went our separate ways. And about a month later, 2 months later, so we shut down March 31st, 2020. And in June 2020, at the height, the maximum craziness of the lockdown, I started Splainer. And with Splainer, really, the idea is to go beyond the traditional newsletter. You no longer consume us on your email. In fact, we are very sort of agnostic. You can get a notification of the daily edition. So we call it an edition, we don't call it a newsletter. The daily edition via WhatsApp, you can get it via email, or you can get on our app. It's really up to you how you want to get to that, content, which is our daily edition. But it does follow the format of everything is on a single scroll. So it feels like a newsletter if you see it, but it has different sections. It's set up to be a lot more playful, visual, and really offers, the idea really is not so much to do a newsletter. It's much more to sort of replace or bring back the old experience and the pleasure, really, the joy of reading that morning newspaper and having that kind of 360-degree kind of coverage, and having you feel like, oh, I need to read this, and that is great. That's all I need to read, right? And I'll get into what we do later, but it was really, the idea was to disrupt the idea of the newsletter, not so much do a traditional newsletter, to really sort of challenge what you call a newsletter and what you think is a newsletter. So that's what we're doing. We're doing well. And, now I'm in the drudgery of like doing my first institutional round, which means all pitch decks and begging. But that's me. So I've had a lot of experience of doing something like First Post, which was incubated inside Network 18 and therefore was never resource poor. I've had the experience of going out and hustling for money. I've had the experience of doing something that made no money, like Broadsheet, and something that has been like, in the green, has been monetized from day one, which is Plainer, which is paid. It's a paid product. And I've done something that, which is 18 million, unique visitors a month, to something that is, 8,000 subscribers, or where we are today, which is, I think 6,000 subscribers, right? So in terms of scale, in terms of reach, in terms of what you're trying to do, those are very, very, very different things. And even you might think a broadsheet and a Plainer is the same thing. It isn't. There's a huge difference between doing a paid product and not doing a paid product. So let me backtrack and say, so let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, right? And I think the first question you should ask yourself is, do you really want to be an entrepreneur? I think you really need to start from there, and I'll tell you why. Because if you want to focus only on the work of journalism, which is you want to report, you want to edit, you want to commission, you just want to run a newsroom, you should not be an entrepreneur. Because being a media entrepreneur means you have to do lots of other things, and the chances are the more successful you are, the more successful your company is, the less you will do actual journalism. Because now you're the founder and you're the CEO. Now you can be someone like Naresh, who runs Scroll, and get yourself, he has a partner, Samir Patel, who's brilliant, who handles the business side. But still, it is not the same as Naresh running Time Out, for example, because he's the co-founder, he has to think of revenue. He has to think about all the things that you're taught in journalism not to want to think about, which is traffic, which is, revenue. How much money did we make this month? How many people are our subscriptions stalling out? That lands on you as much as a co-founder, even if you are only you're primarily in an editorial role. So the number one question you should ask yourself is that what you want to do? Because I know there's a lot of romanticism, there's a lot of attention given to people who are founders, oh wow, that person's a founder, they have a startup. It's actually not terribly glamorous, and it's not a lot of fun, right? Because you spend a lot of time doing shit you absolutely have no reason or interest in doing, but you have to do it because the business demands it, right? And I'm talking about, making sure you're GST is paid, making sure you have a proper CA, maybe making sure your legal is fine, right? You spend a lot of time and energy in all the stuff that just keeps the company going, right? It's not even the work that you do. The work that you do is there, but it's not enough, right? You always have to do all these other things around it. And even if you're not responsible, even if you hire someone, it is your responsibility. So like even when I was at First Post, when you're taking money out of the picture, I still had to worry about sales. I still had to worry about tech. I still had to worry about product. I still had to worry about marketing. I still had to worry about, is our content getting stale? Are people not reading? What are people reading? What should they be reading? How do we get them to read more? How do we get them to, what is our bounce rate? Why are they bouncing off our site? We need to keep them, longer. Or how do we get engagement up? So it's a lot of noise. And if you think in your heart your talent is to report, is to like do fantastic reporting, is to be a great editor, then that's what you should choose to do. So that would be my first thing that I would say to you, that don't buy into all the tamasha and drama that happens on Twitter around people being founders and having startups. Most of the time, most of us, and I know that for a fact, are losing sleep over the fact that we're not making enough money or we're not growing quickly enough. It's not a particularly, it's not that you sit around basking and in kind of your success, right? And the moment you're in a business, the business has to keep growing. So then you have to think of the business as your Frankenstein, right? So it's like a Frankenstein. Once you create that baby, it will demand what you do next. So let me give you an example. I just closed a round where we raised $100,000. I'm already starting to go out on the road to do my next raise because I can't wait. My next raise has to come in 8 months, six months, not even 8 months, it's too much. 4 to 6 months, I have to do the next round, right? I have to keep moving down that product roadmap. I have to keep growing at a particular pace. So this isn't something you should do. And you can't have, sick days. And you can't be like, what, I just want to go for my friend's wedding and spend a week having fun. Those things stop being an option. When you are working for a large organization, you can say, well, I'm entitled to so much leave. I can do this. I want to do this. I want to go on a holiday. And all those things are okay and doable. But once you're a founder, once you're an entrepreneur, it becomes very, very difficult. It becomes very difficult because this is yours. There is no boss that you can be angry at ki chutti nahi diya. Like you are your own boss, and trust me, there's no more punitive boss than you when it comes to yourself. So I would think very long and hard before you go on an entrepreneurial path, because there is no good or bad thing about being a media entrepreneur. It's neither shameful nor is it glorious. There are people who think, oh my God, doing the business of news is so like gross and icky and a violation. That's what's wrong with journalism today. And then there are people who think like there's nothing more amazing and glamorous than being like, a founder of your own media startup. And neither of those things are true. It's just, what is true to you, right? So that's number one. So let's start with the next. Okay, you've decided you really want to be an entrepreneur. This is what you want to do. So what is your business idea, right? Now, business ideas are not something that are just lying around. A business idea doesn't come like, oh, that would be a cool thing to do. Oh, wouldn't that be really great? Or wouldn't that really add to like, oh, we don't do really great gender journalism in this country, so let's do a women's magazine, which is also, or women's news site or whatever it is, which is all very true. But actually, a business idea is something to do with the market. It has to, business ideas do not start with you. They do not start with your peers. They do not start with other people who are like media professionals or editors or reporters. A business idea starts with the market of users, of audience, or readers, news consumers. What is it that they are missing? If you are not offering them something that they're missing, they are not going to. You may think it's amazing, but if they don't want it, they're not going to read it. They're not going to watch it. They're not going to do anything. So that idea is already dead in the water, right? And it can't be just something that you and your particular world that you inhabit in. And especially like if you're in college or if you're like part of the different cliques, and journalists are particularly susceptible to this because we live in like little echo chambers of our own. It can't be just what you and your everyone you know or thinks is cool or awesome or whatever, or think is really valuable and important. I hate to be a party pooper. Even valuable and important is not a business idea. Then you should do a non-profit, right? So keep that clear in your head. If you think you're doing something that's valuable to society, but not necessarily something that will be, have wide appeal to a very large audience, but still is necessary for our democracy, for our country, to promote justice or equality or awareness, then you would do a non-profit, right? Then you do a non-profit, that's a very different path for you. And that path takes you to foundations, that path takes you to, basically you're not going to make huge amounts of money, but you could have great impact. So The Wire is a good example of that, right? And that path takes you also, but it's also a struggle. Again, I'll loop back to it if that's what you want to hear more about, because I know that environment as well as a former investment advisor for a fund. But even there, the funds are no longer willing to endlessly fund something that is not going to become sustainable, that doesn't make money in the long run. So that's something for you to keep in mind. More and more, even foundations are looking for self-sustaining businesses for them to fund, rather than saying, okay, it's going to lose money forever and we will keep funding it, right? So then you decide, okay, I have this idea. I know there is a gap. I know people really want this and they need this, and no one's actually noticed this gap, right? So what's an example of that? So for Splainer, for me, the gap was the fact that everyone was churning out more and more journalism and more news, and no one was asking themselves whether people even had the time of day to discover this news, discover this journalism, discover this coverage, or this video, or this long read, or this analysis, or this report, and even had the attention or time to do so. We now live in an environment in a situation I call news pollution, where basically we have an entire, because of Web 2.0, because of the big social media platforms, and this pressure to, sort of churn out more and more SEO, driven content, huge amounts of content, and people are just struggling to find stuff that they want to know. It's really become harder. The irony is that the more and more news you actually have is becoming more and more challenging to be well informed, right? And Splainer is trying to get a solution to that. It's trying to find a solution that says, how do you cut through the pollution? How do you cut through all that junk and the clickbait and the badly written PTI copy and the endless links that replicate the same information but pretend they have something else in them? How do you get to like the actual information that's in there, all the talking heads and the opinionating and the ranting and the fighting? And how do you get to like, what is really happening? So we offer explanation, take a very big piece, story. In fact, where you have the most coverage, you have the least understanding because there's so much of it out there. And no one can read 15 stories on one subject a day. So we take that one big story and we explain it. Then we do curation. So what does curation look like? Curation is not just like it's become a very cheap word. But the idea is that you will never, ever be satisfied with just having one newspaper today or just going to one news site today, because you know that there are 100, 200 news sites around the world which have interesting things that you want to read, right? Whether it's politics, the economy, art, design, pop culture. There's so much out there. So we bring back the human, and that is really the editorial thing where we curate it, and it's very high quality curation. And the whole idea is that you don't have to keep scrolling and clicking and scrolling and clicking. Can you see how I'm talking constantly from the user point of view? Like I'm always in the shoe of my user. Like how does it feel to try and find things today that you want to do, that you want to read, that you want to, watch? And the third thing we do is basically context. So that is what is always missing in everything, even in a throwaway, like if you can get news in shots, but there is no context in those two headlines and the 3-4 lines they've copy pasted off, Indian Express. Why does this news item matter? Where is it? And then to give you a 360-degree experience, because people don't just want to consume what's Ukraine. They just don't want to know what's, happening with, for example, the farm laws, or they just don't want to know, like, okay, in Sri Lanka, the food. Yes, they don't want to know all of that, but they also want to know about pop culture. They also want to discover painting. I mean, discover all the things that are wonderful in the world that you yourself personally enjoy. But somehow, I don't know why we in the media don't think that everyone else should be like us. They also enjoy music. They also enjoy, movies. They also enjoy like silly cat videos. They also enjoy, architecture, design. And it's also a reminder, and this is something that you must really deeply think about, if you're going to dedicate yourself to this field, which really kind of will feed into your self-importance and a thing of like, what I'm doing is so important. And if you don't want to read me, then obviously you're stupid, right? No, actually, people are suffering from incredible news fatigue. They are like suffering from the news has been relentlessly negative for so long, right? And you will find yourself suffering from the same fatigue as you progress in this profession. So you must have sympathy and empathy for that. And so which is why we always inspire, remind people that the world is a wonderful place. It is full of delight and discovery, right? So, and how do you take all of that, put it together in one place, which is delivered one time, so you never have endless notifications, and you have a wonderful experience of consuming the news. The experience of consuming the news is what is the market gap, because no one is thinking what it feels like for a user, for a consumer, for a news reader to actually consume news. How exhausting it can feel, how confusing it can feel, how depressing it can feel, right? Day after day after day. And so to take that and disrupt that entirely. So I started with a newsletter template, but my intent is not to be a newsletter. My intent is much deeper. It's to disrupt the entire experience of consuming news, right? And I just took this template because it suits me and it suits our user who wants everything in one scroll. They don't want to, go and read multiple stories in multiple places unless they particularly want to. We have all those links and all of that. If they find something interesting, they'll read it. If they want to watch something, they will. So you identify a market gap. So you've done that. Now, your next thing is you have to raise money. Oh, no, sorry. Your next decision is, are you going to be free or paid? So if you decide I'm going to be free, then you must have economies of scale, right? Which means that you have to say, I'm going to be at 10 million, 15 million, the audience. That is it. I am going to be in regional languages. I'm going to be in English. I'm going to be in Hindi, Tamil. And that is my roadmap. I'm going for this massive audience, right? Because I'll tell you quite frankly, when you're free, then you must take your money from advertising, right? That is your revenue model. So, which means a couple of things for you to think of, which means you're monetizing the product is not your product, the product is your user, is your reader, is your audience. And that's what you're monetizing. And that's what you're selling to brands. And that's what they'll give you money for, right? And you're going into a situation where Google and Meta between them basically take 90% of all digital ad revenues, goes to them. Then you have the other big boys. You have, Times Group, you have Network 18, you have all those guys vying for the same, whatever's left of that pie, right? And so you have to think through very carefully, what is it that you'll turn around and tell a brand or an advertiser saying, I can deliver these people to you. It is a very, very difficult challenge. It remains, what has happened is, because the big boys have taken most of the advertising revenue, even the people in the middle, even 18 million UVs a day, which used to be great for first post, is not good enough today for a brand, right? And even if it is good enough, the rates for digital advertising are so poor that they will want you. Why do you get irritated when you go on a news website today? Why do you think they have 10,000 ads coming at you? Because that's what the brand wants, and the brand is not going to pay if you don't give it to them, right? I mean, I remember my sales and I would like fight over the fact whether the car should come in the middle of the first post website and I like do a wheelie and then go. And how many times it will do it? Will it do it every time you click on the website, or will it do only once? And these would be like terrible arguments, because the moment you're in that, what the brand wants and what your audience wants are completely diametrically opposite. The brand wants to be in your face and make sure you can't miss it, whereas all the person who's coming, to read you, wants not to see an ad, wants to read whatever it is that they want to read, or watch whatever they want to watch, right? So there is a tension there in being free. Free gives you bigger reach. It is easier. There's no friction. Paywalls are friction. The moment someone has to reach for a card and pay for something, oh my God, your growth is so much slower, right? But on the other side, you have to think down as you go down that product roadmap. What is it going to look like? And especially for all of you, you're in a transition time where Web 2, so what I call Web 2 is basically a model that is driven by monetizing eyeballs, run by giant platforms like, Google and Facebook, and even through the App Store by, Apple and again, Google, and Insta, whatever. But their algorithms kind of control all distribution. Whatever you make has to be distributed through them, right? And so they get to decide who you reach or don't reach based on what you pay, or maybe, tomorrow the algorithm changes because of their needs, there you are. This has happened repeatedly to news outlets around the world, right? A great example is, Facebook really decided we're going to pivot to video. So everyone pivoted to video, and then Facebook said, oops, I changed my mind, right? And then everyone is left with these huge staff of video producers that suddenly were not being surfaced on Facebook, right? So I think you have to figure out that how are you going to go about that? So where is your track? Do you want to build a mass product? It can totally be done. If you can identify a gap in the market and that market is big enough, it is in the millions, tens of millions, absolutely. You will make money, you will find the advertising revenue, and most importantly, even forget the advertising revenue, you will be able to find the funding, because that's the sort of thing that's very attractive to VCs. They like 15 million, 100 million. They want it in those numbers, right? And that's what they want. And for that, if you do a free product with a large enough audience, with a large enough, what they call a total addressable market, which is like everybody who fits that kind of checkbox of demographic, right? Then you can go and raise money. It will be much easier for you. But you're also at a time from a technology point of view, and this is going to be important for you. So now, see, you're taking a business idea and you're thinking about your deck. Actually, that's when a business idea becomes a business plan, because you have to fill all these questions. All these slides have to be filled, right? What is your addressable market? How much are you going to grow when? What is, how big do you think you're going to be, right? And then, of course, the question will be about tech. Now you're between this Web 2.0, where you have the social media platforms who run everything, and you're moving to Web 3. Now, Web 3 means many things, and it's used in many, many different ways. But let's narrow it down to some version of, like, I'm sure Dave's talked to you about, which is AR and VR, right? So either augmented reality or virtual reality. Is it going to be fully immersive? Or so? And what would media look like? I don't think we have answers for that today. But that is the world you are entering. What you're experiencing today is already dying. It is going, right? All the, Insta, Twitter, these are all like, this is like saying, in the old days you had AOL, and who knows AOL anymore. So these are all on their way out. Not that the same companies will not be doing, be part of this new world, but they will not be doing what they're doing now, right? So you will have to think very deeply about how does your business plan, business idea, or your product, your baby, how is it going to thrive? In the end, even if it starts today or tomorrow or day after, it has to grow in that environment, in that new world, right? So whatever that you embed into it, whatever you kind of build into it, has to allow it to grow in that direction, right? So I'll give you an example that a first post cannot grow in this new universe, in this new world. It is very kind of all the things I was talking about: live blogging, live tweeting, SEO search, Google News ko, Rig Karo, right? You rack up page views, you rack up UVs by doing those kinds of things, which is basically using your big algorithms, platform algorithms, and basically learning how to kind of game them. Those are going to be useless skills, right? But which is also why it's very exciting for you. I think I would strongly suggest whatever business idea you come up with, you think very deeply, where do you think media will go? What do you think media will look like in an augmented reality or a virtual reality world? Now, of course, in India, there will always remain a big technology gap. So it also depends who you're talking to. But even then, I wouldn't really so easily assume that, with Geo being a big player, all these big players, that it will be that impossible to imagine that a person who has a smartphone today, and many people have smartphones, would also have an AR device, right? It's not that hard to imagine 3-4 years down the line. As long as there is big money interested in that technology, it will move in that direction. And big business is, right? And big tech is. So that's the second thing. So is a business idea becomes a business plan when you answer those things in your deck, right? I think that's when you're thinking about how am I going to execute? How am I going to build this? How will I pay for it? How will I make money? Who am I going to reach? And the best business plans, ideas are user driven. You have to start from the user. You have to start from the consumer. You have to start from the citizen. I don't care what you call them. You have to start from the person that you think you are offering value to. And you have to be very clear about your value proposition to that person, and say, this is what I am giving you. And you have to be very confident that this person will value what you're offering. Because if they don't value it, you don't have a value proposition, by the way. There is no value that exists intrinsically outside of your audience. They are the ones who determine value, not you, right? And I don't care how good your journalism is and how worthy it is. Again, that's a different direction. But if you're doing a business, it has to offer value. Look, if it was Uber works or Ola works because it is inherently valuable to like not stand on the side of the road and keep waving your hands at like autos that don't stop or don't want to take you somewhere that you want to go, right? Um, so there has to be value that you give. Okay, so now you've done your deck. Now, what does the investor look at? So you go and you pitch your deck. I will tell you straight off the bat, being a media product in this country is not going to be attractive in general. In general, they'd rather put their money in tech, something that's a pure tech play, or a fintech play, or an e-commerce play, or Joby play. But the moment you say news, they think two things. One is, array, in India, it's always a headache. News is a headache because the government never doesn't like news. And it's not just this government, previous governments. It just, in general, news is a headache in India from a business point of view, right? That's one. Second, their question will be, ki, how are you going to make money? Because we are currently in a moment where the business model is completely broken, right? Where basically, like I said, all the middle guys are not making money, but even the big guys are not making money. Even Times is losing money on print for the first time, right? So, and TV is just dying. People are just not even, as the more you have the phone revolution, the smartphone revolution, as smartphone becomes more and more ubiquitous, Mukesh Bhai Zindabad, the more it is going to threaten the revenue. Everyone's revenue model is under threat, right? So the second thing is very plain. They want to know, how will you make money, right? And if you don't have a very clear sense of how you will make money, you're not going to get any money, because there are two kinds of investors. Even the investor so for example, my first 100,000, I raised from explainer subscribers. You know that not one of them is a high net in individual. Sorry, I need to. Not one of them is a high net worth individual. And they range from someone who has worked in ICI in a very senior position to someone who's 28 years old and she has a job at Sony, right? So there are people who are a wide range, but they have given money because they believe in our work. Yes, they think it's valuable, but they also give the money because, as investors, because they think it will succeed, that there is a market for it, that people will pay for something called Splay Now, right? And if they didn't believe that second thing, then that's a donation. That is not an investment, right? And it'll be very hard for you to find people who will donate 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, and keep donating it year after year when you're making no money, right? So how you will make money, because that is what will determine your sustainability, whether you survive or not in the long run, is how sustainable are you. Now, in sustainability, and this is where I want to come to the third model, you can think of something much smaller. You can think of something that is never going to have, let's say, more than 15,000 subscribers, but it's a paid product, or maybe even more than even 10,000, 15,000, 50,000, whatever. But it pays its own bills. It's not very expensive to do. And you're taking money directly from the person who pays. It's a very pure relationship. It's between you and the person who pays for the work you do, right? There is no brand in the middle. There's no advertiser in the middle. There is no VC in the middle. There's no investor in the middle. So the first year of Splainer, by the way, when I was still testing the product, was like that. We made money from our subscriptions. We paid our bills from our subscriptions. I think we made very little and we spent very little because there was only me and 2 other people and a couple of trainees, and everyone was working from home. everyone got chota salary. I haven't seen a salary in like, I think 5 years, but that's what we did. It was that model, and it could have kind of stayed there, and it would remain small, but it would remain very sustainable. It would remain very boutique, and there is no shame in that. You say, this is how I want to make money. So Substack is trying to kind of sell that model, right? That they're saying the newsletter, and this is where the newsletter comes in, where you have the strategy, you have all these individuals who are writing newsletters, and people pay for their newsletters. So it's that direct relationship between the two, right? And you say, that's how I'm going to make my money. And there is a great purity in that, and there's great, but you should also know that all the data shows that there's only, you want to talk about the top 1%, it is criminal in the newsletter data. It's only the tiny 1% who kind of break through, how lots of times they're already famous and kind of make that kind of money. But still there's money to be made. I think especially in India, where there's such a hunger for like good reporting, good analysis. I would look at like what Samarth Bansal is like experimenting with the interval. Really doing reporting by himself, doing these long pieces twice a month. He's still doing it for free, but that's a great example of a very easily monetizable newsletter, because that kind of reporting and that kind of analysis that he brings, and his great strength is understanding numbers and data, is really missing elsewhere, and people will pay for it. Right? So that is the third way to go. And you say, that's what I want to do. And I think that is probably the closest of where you don't have to like think about, running a business, where really you are the business, right? It's based, you get a sole proprietorship license and you just start your business, and that you are it, right? And there's no, it's simple, but it's not scalable. That I will say bluntly. You can have a nice life and you can make a decent amount of money, but it is not going to be a gigantic success. And tomorrow your life goes in a particular way and you say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this like, 4 times a week, or, whatever it is that you do. Then it'll die with that and it'll go, right? So that's less of a business. That's more of I call it a cottage industry. And unless you build, and you can make a lot of money in that, but then you can't, then you have to build yourself as a brand, right? You have to be a brand. So you have to do all your marketing, you have to find your audience, because there is no one to help you do that. So that means you have to develop most of the discovery of what's on Substack and on these platforms happens on Twitter. So you have to build your Twitter persona, your Twitter following. You have to make sure you're seen on TV, or you're seen on panels, you're seen on conferences, you're very visible. So you have to treat yourself as a company, right? So that is another way, but then you have to treat yourself as a company. You have to market yourself. You have to brand yourself in a particular way, communicate in a particular way, figure out where your audience is, how to reach them, how to make yourself visible to them, etc., etc. So, so that's that. And then once you have raised money, like I said, it is a sprint. You will never stop raising money for a long time. Because once you raise that first angel round, you will have to raise your first institutional round. Then once you have institutional investors at the table, they will expect you to, they will have their own timeline as to when you have to go for the next institutional round. And so it goes and goes and goes. Then you start committed not only to, you can still change your product roadmap, but it's very hard for you to change your funding roadmap, is what I'll say to you very plainly, right? So, and that's when it becomes a business. That's when you have to, your job is no longer like, oh, let me put out this amazing product every day or every week. It becomes very much about, how am I going to grow? How am I actually raising them is one thing. thing, and spending the money is another thing. Then you have to hire people, then you have to manage people, then you have to like figure out if your roadmap isn't working, because a lot of like being a startup founder is actually realizing you're full of shit, and actually you're completely wrong. What you thought would work has failed miserably, and now you have to try something else, right? Because remember value proposition. You thought you were offering something valuable. Guess what? They just yawned in your face and said, see ya. So you're like, oh, that doesn't work. Or some bright idea that your investors had or the VCs had and said, oh, you should do this. And you say, okay, fine, I'll do it. And it's not working. So you try something else. So a lot, your product roadmap is shifting. Things around you are changing all the time because the environment that you're operating in is changing. Whether it is the technology that's changing, but it's also laws that are changing, and what you can and cannot do, and what is going to work or not work. Because when laws change, then the companies change how they operate, the big tech companies, which then impacts you. So you're always in this incredibly fluid environment that you're navigating, and you're trying to like figure out what's next now so that you can be ready for it and start moving in that direction and not be caught wrong-footed. And that's really the rest of it. And in the end, if all of it works, you have a brilliant company, you've left a legacy that is going to outlive you, right? That it's not going to just be about you, your name. It is going to be something like, even 50 years from now, someone will be reading what you created. Someone will be consuming what you created. I mean, it will definitely look nothing like what you created, but that will be your contribution to the field, to have created an institution, not just a company, but an institution that represents something, that does a certain kind of work and represents a certain value system, whatever it may be. So that's it, really. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. I feel like I've been talking non-stop. So I would actually be incredibly happy to take questions now.
Yeah, guys, question time. Who wants to go first? You can raise your hand here. Yeah, she will pick then. Is that okay, Lakshmi?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Karthik, go ahead.
Morning, ma'am.
Hi.
I wanted to know, like, is there any business which uses data? Like they have based their business on data kind of things.
Actually, data journalism is very poor in this country, right? So that is a huge market gap. The problem is right now for data journalism, people actually turn to big media companies, turn to market research firms. You know what I mean? I mean, they try and get data from there, and they try to get them to crunch data. So there's actually like not a lot of training in data journalism in India, and I think there's a huge need for it. Mint in the middle experimented in doing a lot of data journalism, but it didn't sort of go anywhere. I think part of it is also you have to realize that bigger companies don't really kind of value data journalism, but I think people really do. But again, you will have to wrap your data journalism in storytelling, right? Numbers don't mean anything to people. So I think there's a great business opportunity to be doing with data journalism. That's why here again, I would look at like Samarth or try and reach out to him, because he has an IIT degree and he entered actually journalism after doing an engineering degree. So he has a perspective that's interesting, and definitely, I'm happy to like share the website of Samarth, and I think he's on Splay now. So let me find it. I just put it in. And so I think, yes, there's a huge gap in this country in data journalism. But I think the trick is cracking it. Trick is actually figuring out how you're going to monetize it, because who's going to buy that? Are you going to sell directly to the consumer who's saying that you really want data journalism, or are you going to sell data journalism to the bigger companies and say, you know, you guys are not going to invest in like data journalists, but here I'll sell, you know, really high quality data journalism to you, right? I'll syndicate it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next? Yeah, Sridev, you can go. Ranjini just talked.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. So
Hi.
I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know how well the revenue-based, subscription-based revenue model has workforce planner, and also would such a model work for a publication that is catering more to tier 2 cities and small towns, whose content is more regional rather than English? So yeah, these are two questions I have.
Yeah. Okay. So with Spinner, it's worked well. Like I said, we were paying our bills from day one. It's amazing how many people became founding members. They gave more money. They gave like 5,000, 10,000 just to like help us, pay our initial bills. All my angel investors are Spinner subscribers, actually. They're subscribers who became investors, which is quite amazing. And I actually want to strongly encourage you to think of a paid product for regional, because we all think of we English language media people think of regional as like people who are poor or don't have money. Actually, there are a lot of people who have money who want to consume in their language, right? They're happier consuming. Yes, they speak English or whatever. It's not that they have a problem with the English, but they just happier consuming in Hindi or in Tamil or in Kannada, right? And they're willing. In fact, there is I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a media fund, and he said, the gap is the need and the scarcity for quality content is even bigger in regional, right? In fact, regional, we have treated regional, because regional, first of all, is always done by either grassroots organizations who are talking to, like a Khabar area is trying to talk to a different set of people, right? Or it's being done by the daily hunts where they just assume that I'm just going to give you junk content, right? You're just numbers for me. How can I, take me, I want to go from 10 million to 50 million, okay, Hindi kar lenge, right? Right? But I think no one has really spent the time to say, like, how can I do really high quality content for people who want to consume in their mother tongue, in their first language, right? That's a huge audience for you. It's bigger than anything Splainer would get. Splainer's biggest audience will be 40 million globally, right? That's people who are what you call the English first Indian, global Indian, whether they're in Dallas, they're in Delhi. But your audience is much bigger. I would highly recommend. Hold on, now where's the comment box? Let me find it there. I would highly recommend googling Sajid Pai, who does a very good job of giving you audience numbers, right? He's very good. He's an investment advisor with Bloom Ventures, and he's written about this extensively. He does a very good job of slicing and dicing that. So I think yes. Paid product and I don't want to call it regional. I just want to say for a non-English consuming audience is like, if I could do it, I would do it. But I don't have any expertise or skills because I spent 20 years in the States. So I realize how out of touch I am for that audience. So I'm the wrong founder for a product for that. Okay.
Yeah, Ranjini. We'll come back to you, Karthik, after Ranjini.
Sir, I think my net is a little unstable, but hello, ma'am. Thank you for such an insightful session. So I have a couple of questions. So my first question will be that this is what I'm asking everybody to get a sense of what I have to do in an entrepreneurial project, which will cater to a larger audience. So when I start any organization or in the beginning, if at this moment Instagram is the place where we have to be, does it have to be niche content, like a particular kind of content, rather than it being all over the place, because everybody has like a field of specialization? So does it have to be a specific thing, or do we need to tap into every kind of thing to get more a variety of people to engage with us, or does it have to be a niche? Does it have to be niche content?
Okay, so the answer is actually based on what is on Instagram. From what I understand, now there are a bunch of people who have started, I think, general news feeds on Insta. It's Insta only news, right? God, I forget the names, yeah. Hold on. So there are a bunch of people who are doing that. I know there are global handles that do that. So they do all kinds of news, and they do kind of news for a very 18 to 22. Is that your audience? 18 to 22, 18 to 24 audience, younger. So very visual, Insta friendly, and they do general news. I'm thinking first you have to find out how much of that is out there. Because if there's enough out there, then what are you going to offer? This is what I mean by where is the gap? Even on Insta, there has to be a gap. Huh? If there's no gap, I mean, why would they follow you as opposed to if they're already following two other people who give them the same thing, right? So what is it unique that you will offer them? So I think that you have to start like, not with the cart, but the horse. The horse is what is missing even in news on Insta that people don't have. Is it general news? Is it news about a specific subject? Is it news for a specific audience? It could be young women. It could be, older women. In fact, I feel like, the 40 something, 50 something women are not talked to at all. And they like have money. I don't know why no one sells to them. They have the money, they have the interest, but no one is interested in like selling them or talking to them at all. So it depends on where you think the gap is. So I would go and really understand Indian news Insta, see who all the people like are out there, what is it that they are providing, and what do you think is missing? Then you ask yourself, how am I going to provide this missing thing in a kick-ass way? That, they will love me, that they will like come flocking to me. And then you'll say, once I've done it in a kick-ass way, how can I get people in this field who may have followings? Let's say I'm talking to a niche or I'm talking to whoever, share me and promote me on their Insta handles because they have bigger followers. Then it goes down that path. But you have to start with the horse. So you asked me a very cart-like question. That is the cart.
And what's your second question, Ranjini?
So thank you so much, ma'am. The second question is, ma'am, you just said you want to share something about the Reliance investing in First Post, that whole situation. So could you share that? Thank you.
Look, it's very simple. And if you're going to go out and be in the news business in India, you should just understand how it works. Look, in the end, most big news companies are generally businesses. They're owned by businesses who generally do stuff other than media, right? And it's not just Reliance. It's true even of HT, by the way, and all these other people. A lot of them, they have other business interests. So, if you're going to threaten their other business interests, you pressure their news business. You pressure their news business by pressuring the other business interests, and you get their attention. The second thing to understand is that even people who have their own businesses and only do news, like an NDTV, Pranay Roy, Network 18, which is Raghav Behl, they end up taking a lot of money from these guys who do businesses. Pranay took money from Mukesh, Raghav took money from Mukesh. And once you take money from people, and now Raghav is again tied up with Adani. So once you take money from people, it is a pressure point for you, right? And basically, it was very simple what happened. This is the first time Modi won, and Raghav owed a lot of money to Mukesh. Lot of money. He had taken a lot of money to plow into Network 18 to make it into that big empire. And Ambani just called his debt, which he had every right to. It was perfectly legal. He asked, he said, I want you to pay me. And so Network 18 changed hands. And don't mistake yourself into thinking that there is some bad Ambani came and then everything went to hell, yevo. Even in places that are owned by people who are not Ambanis, there is pressure all the time to take down pieces, to tone down pieces. It might be because of the political bias of the person who runs that company. It may be because, who is the most sensitive? It's not politicians. The most sensitive are businesses. It's amazing the amount of pressure there is from businesses to take a negative piece down, right? And it depends on, so things get taken down all the time. Where you don't see what the reason it becomes visible is when there is a huge kind of swivel, like a big change where, everything starts to follow a certain kind of ideology or, line that you think reflects either the interests of the owner or the interests of the party in power. So that's not what really even the Ambanis did. They didn't really kind of get into it till about a year. And then when they got into it, they had very basic things, 3 things that they didn't want me to do. But what seemed to them as very simple, basic things were not okay from a journalism point of view, right? You can't say, I'm not going to criticize these 3 people, but freely do whatever you want with everyone else. But the moment you can't criticize 3 people, your journalism is gone, right? Your credibility is gone, your brand is gone, everything is gone, right? And, and how much ever you may think it wasn't like a big fight, I didn't get on some like moral mountain and say, oh, how dare you impeach my integrity? Because remember, it is their business. It is their business. They pay the bills. They do everything. And they were trying to push through 4G at that time. Now, do you think from a business point of view, a 4G is important or a 20 crore first post? Everything is a business calculation. You will not survive this business if you take everything personally and you take everything as a moral crusade. It was a simple business calculation and they did the math, and the math you can't argue with. So you walk away. So that's what I did. I said, it's your business. You must handle it the way you want. You must run it the way you want, and I will go. And I left with not many hard feelings, to be honest. But it has made me a better entrepreneur, I think. I think much harder about who I take money from. I think much harder about, about that trade-off, because that trade-off will come even when you get investors. Don't think investors don't come with their own agenda and their own ideas, and they may not be political, but they will be maybe growth driven, right? They may be revenue driven. And then those become political too, right? Inevitably. Can you really make a lot of money if you're constantly fighting with the powers that be, right? So my thing is, you have to be careful. The thing is, you must always ask yourself as a consumer, who is giving the money? How are these people funded? And that's true of anybody. I don't care if it's even like a small organization, you must know these things. And the second thing is, as a founder, you must think very deeply about who you take money from. And make those choices and live with those choices.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Karthik?
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, I just had one question that you spoke about angel investors and the people who you deal with. Could you tell us, like, how did you start approaching your investors? Like, what was the process behind that?
Oh, the angel ones, is it? The angel investors?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So listen, when I did Broadsheet, we didn't make any revenue. It was a free product. So there it was very friends and family and kind of my co-founder's network of like people, richish people she knew. You know what I mean? But with Splainer, we had already tapped out all our friends, family. No one was going to give us anything. That was it. So I did a paid product, right? And we got a lot of, so I had all these subscribers to Broadsheet who still, when we shut down, was very upset. So a lot of them gave chota amounts from 2,000 to 10,000. In fact, most of them in the 2,000, 3,000 range, right? Just for me to collect, maybe 5 lakhs to pay for like some basics, to put the product together and pay some thoda sa chota salary and just start. And then once we started, actually, it's the subscribers who reached out to me and I put it on the website. So if you go to the founding member thing, we used to have this thing on a sliding scale. And then if you reached beyond 10,000, the next thing was 5 lakhs. And I was like, hey, if you're going to give me that much money, let's talk equity. So I put it out on the website and people actually reached out to me. So I actually have not, God, I sound so spoiled. I have not actually had to go and ask people to give me money. So I did, but I think I could do that because I had a career, I was late. This is later in my career. I've done all these things, right? But I think you'll be surprised how many people will support good work once they can see it. Because I think one of the worst things we do sometimes is really kind of treat people like idiots, like they don't understand or appreciate quality. You'd be surprised by how many people are just so appreciative. You have this thing like, oh, Indians don't like to pay for anything. They're so chindi, they're so this, they're so that. No, Indians don't pay for news because look at the news we've been giving them for like generations now. Who wants to pay for that? But when you give them something that's quality, that they think has integrity in it, I actually think you'll be amazed by it's easier to get money from them than it is to go to a rich person and say, "Mujhe 2 lakh bhi de do, 1 lakh bhi de do." That is harder, right? It'll be easier for you to raise that same 1 lakh from 20, 30 people saying that, but you have to do the work first. So you have to be willing to do the work to show okay, this is what we want to do so that they can see it. Does that answer your question?
Ma'am, just one thing. You said you put the message on your website and all those things. So is there any software you use or you have people working for you? You handle the website?
No. So it's integrated with, so basically we said if it's more than, 10,000 and all, you can take via Razorpay. 5 lakhs, I said, you have to email me because then they will at least want to know what your business is. वो तो check नहीं लिखेंगे 5 lakh के लिए. They will want to talk to you. They will want to have a conversation, understand your business model. Like, what are you trying to do? Who are you? Get to know you. And then they give you the money. They'll do some they all do due diligence from on their part. They're not going to just, that's not right. See, they're investors. They're not funders. Who donate nahi kar rahe. Donation in that 3 to 10,000 is through Razorpay.
Thank you.
Shreyanshi?
Hello, ma'am. So you briefly spoke about curation, and since there's a huge sort of volume of news that's available in the internet space and everywhere else, I was wondering if you think the idea is done to death or if there's a niche to be tapped in that.
I think curation in general is done to death. By that, I mean low quality curation that is very much, you pull 10, 15 stories together and you throw it at people. You know what I mean? So that's why Instagram actually now does that curation. I think if you want to do curation in any other platform, it's not going to work for you because Insta is doing that curation for you. They basically, what are people doing now on Insta? They're setting up curation feeds. I think it is going to kill InShots. Daily Hunt has already moved away because that curation now, those curation feeds you can get on Insta. You don't, why do you need an app to get a headline and a couple of details about a story, right? You follow these feeds on Insta, you will get it, right? So cheap curation, the moment is done, it's over. And by cheap curation, I mean either it is driven by deskies who say, "Arey, kya, what is on Google News? Arey, kya, what is everyone talking about? Oh, okay, this is being out there on Twitter." Where, you don't need any knowledge, you don't need any experience, and then all of you are curating the same 15 stories or 20 stories or 50 stories. I don't care how many stories you're curating, right? And that is not even curating, by the way. It's what I call the infinite scroll. You're just stringing stories together on a long scroll, and you're not curating. There's no curating happening, actually. You're just taking out a big net and you're saying, okay, these are all the big stories. Here it is. And you're flinging it at your audience, right? So that is not called curation. But would you call anything? So, the word curation comes from museums. People get ridiculous amounts of money to curate an exhibition. Do you know that? Like, it is considered a high skill. Curation in media is, give some kid 15,000, tell the kid, look at Twitter, look at Insta, look at whatever, look at the news sites, just pull it together, and like type it out, put an image, put it on Insta, put it on your, news app. That's it. That's curation. That's not curation. So curation is not dead because it's not being done. Certainly not in India. I think you might argue the closest who might come to curation is, have you seen, the newsletters are starting that, at least in the business space. I would say like Filter Coffee. I don't know if you've encountered them. And there is The Signal. So they are trying to do curation plus a little context in the business space. So they're saying these are the 10 business stories that you really need to pay attention to, or whatever that is, right? And they have their own kind of how they come at it. So I think you're starting to see quality curation in certain spaces, but it's very limited to business. You have something called Journey. Have you heard of that? Jurni. So they try and do curation in the culture space. It's like 3 times a week, I think. It's a newsletter. So I think newsletters are trying to get into that curation space where you have confidence, right? It comes with a certain expertise, with a certain taste, with a certain discernment, judgment. The old fashioned, what used to call an editor. That was the job of an editor, to decide what went into a newspaper or went into a magazine or who did not. What happened was, once you went to the website model, there was no discernment. Or when you went into the infinite scroll model, there was no discernment. You would just take everything and dump it in there and say, now you figure out what you want to, right? Read or don't read. But now the newsletter actually has in many ways, when I saw, it has forced you back in that you have only so much space, and you must, sort of make your choices as to what you put in, and people reward you for those choices or punish you for those choices, right? So that is called curation, where you have to show some discernment, some judgment, and that your readers or your subscribers actually value, and say, I really think these people, like, what they give me every day is valuable to me or interesting to me. So I think the age of quality curation is still to be, and I think the other way that people have tried it is to try and outsource it to an algorithm. To date, they have not figured out an algorithm that can recognize anything, anywhere, despite all the money that they have spent. And every algorithm is always, it's like it's Pavlovian. You touch one dog video, it'll keep giving you dog stories. You touch like two, like, Shah Rukh Khan stories, it'll keep giving you Bollywood, right? So for example, I may have been interested in Hollywood now because of the Will Smith stuff, but I don't particularly want to see Hollywood stories all the time. But no algorithm is going to figure that out, because for 2 days I've just been like reading Hollywood. So algorithms can't do it, how much ever the tech guys want to, because you see, the tech dream was, we will make journalists and editors obsolescent, right? Like irrelevant. We won't have to hire them anymore because our super smart algorithm will figure everything out. And, you know, even with this GRPT-3, it will write also, it will become the editor also, it'll give you everything that you want. But we are nowhere close. So I think, yes, curation matters, quality curation. That is a very human quality, and that's what humans also respond to. So one of the great successes of Broadsheet and Splainer is that they feel like the brand has a personality. Why do they think the brand has a personality? Because the brand chooses certain things. And the brand also knows when they're annoyed of the fourth dog video that they have seen now in 4 days in a row. It's like, so then the brand talks to them and say, yes, yes, but I love dogs. So then they laugh, right? So they understand the brand has a personality, has weird quirks that is like interested in, but at the same time has like interests that are like, it's like they always, so one of the things that people use, the words they use is, oh, it's like having a best friend or having a smart friend. So what they mean is a friend who like reads many things and understands many things and is exposed to many things and can take all of that and give it to you in one place, as she might or he might over a cup of tea at Starbucks or Cafe Coffee Day. That's really what they mean. And that's curation. That's curation. When curation is done well, I'm not boasting, but I'm saying that's what we are trying to do. That's what we aspire to do every day. We don't always succeed, but that's what we aspire to do.
Rishika?
Thank you, ma'am. That answers my question. I couldn't agree more about the Pavlovian algorithm.
Rishika?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Hello, ma'am. My question was about the kind of feasibility of subscription-only models. So in India, I think those things are quite new, but there are platforms now, say like News Laundry, which don't take any money from anywhere else. It's just purely based on subscriptions. But I wanted to know how feasible is this? Are people willing to pay for news on that monthly or even a yearly basis? Are they willing to pay that much amount? Because usually we're used to, newspapers or TV, and that is virtually nothing. Those are free basically. They cost very little money. So how willing are people to pay for digital platform subscriptions, which are, priced higher than the traditional items in India?
Okay, so most places, News Laundry is not a good example because they actually have a lot of free content. I can read News Laundry without a subscription. What they have is a sort of their certain, so they follow much more like what Hindustan Times is doing now. You have Indian Express doing that. But News Laundry was early. It's like, so they take a bunch of things and they put it behind paywall and then they give you things for free. So there's a free tier and then there's a premium tier, right? The premium tier in cases of News Laundry and, the News Minute is trying that now, is like, is to say that there it also bundles into like support independent journalism, support quality journalism, so there is a very sort of, it's between a pitch for saying, it's the difference between an airline saying pay more for business class, right? And at the same time saying, a non-profit saying, it's between a donation and a subscription. You know what I'm saying? The two kind of fuse together. You will see some places that are perfectly free, like Quint and Print, still make those pitches. News Minute, in fact, mostly does not makes a pitch towards like Scroll does it as well, support our long form journalism. So you have donation pitches. Wire does it as well. Quint does it. Print does it. Even though it's Raghav and Shekhar Gupta, they all do it now, right? So that is really a call for support. It is not really a call for subscription. A call for support is always a little risky because the person might give it once, they won't give it again, right? The call for subscription is different, and this is what I wanted to say, is like, see, if I'm going to ask you to pay for me as a subscription, then I have to deliver the same thing all the time, right? I have to maintain my quality here, and I have to, like, be perfectly receptive to you. If, let's say, in Splainer, you have paid for me, but if like 50% of my content is not appealing to you, you won't resubscribe, right? Because once you have subscription, then you've invested in churn. You can't lose these people, right? So you have to just get them to subscribe, then you have to keep them subscribing, right? So it requires you to be very, very focused. So now subscription model works if you have a value proposition. So for example, someone may not read Scroll every day, someone may not read News Minute every day, but they may think these are really worthy, valuable news organizations and give them money, right, to support them. So they don't, that is not a value thing. They will do it and maybe they'll do it again, or maybe they won't do it at all, right? They're saying, I just want this to exist. I think it is valuable. Or Wire is a great example. I just want it to exist. It is important. So let me support it. And they're not looking at whether they use Wire every day or read Wire every day. It's not, that is secondary. But when you are saying subscription, you are saying you will find use value for me often enough for you to think it is worth paying for. It's the same thing with anything. You can say tomorrow, Acha, I'm going to get a subscription package for like salad greens, right? Farm, salad greens, organic. I will support the local farmers. It's all good, right? But they're rotting in your fridge because, in the end, you're eating only burgers and pizza and your salad is going waste. You will cancel that subscription. You see what I'm saying? So that's the way to think about subscription. I think people will pay if they find value in you. And they find value often enough. So you need a repeat use case for you. You can't be like, I'm kind of nice to support. Those are one-time payments. Those are not subscriptions.
Right. And ma'am, I had another question. So
Sure.
you said that, we should be, the first thing we should think about is whether we are interested in the day-to-day of news and, actually writing, reporting and all of that. Or if we're interested in handling actually having a startup or an entrepreneurial venture where we are also involved in the business side and more on the business side rather than taking those calls.
Over time, that's what will happen.
Yeah.
Over time. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's a very personal decision, I suppose. But then, how do you think we could decide that? Because a lot of us are going into journalism for the first time. We're just starting out. So, how do we decide that what seems like a better option to whether start something of yourself at the outset or actually stay in the field and see what we're liking? I mean, how should we go about making that decision?
I think first of all, you can't decide to do. I know there is a lot of push here to follow this IIT model where you graduate and then somehow you get this brilliant startup idea and whatever. But the thing is that journalism, J School is fantastic. J School teaches you a lot, but it's not going to teach you what it feels like to do ground reporting. It's not going to teach you what it feels like to be on a news desk. It's not going to teach you many things, right? Even writing stories or reporting stories or editing stories, these things you learn, you have to think of field experience. I think everyone should do some kind of news job or media job before you do your startup, at least for a couple of years, right? And it depends on what you want to do. If you want to do like ground reporting, those kind of things, those are harder to get to. Those are not things that they give straight off the bat to someone very young who's out of college, right? But there's still jobs to be done and jobs to be had. So, and the nice thing is at least you have a bigger ecosystem now. There's so many big places, small places, regional places. There's a lot more choice than, even when I came to India in 2008. There's literally nothing. They're just the big boys and nothing else, right? So I think I would work in the field for 2 years, because you will not even know what is a good business unless you work, right?
Hmm.
Unless you actually have exposure to what is the field like, how does news get produced, how is it disseminated,
Hmm.
what is the machinery, before you want to make your own, cycle, to at least cycle chala lo, is basically I say, at least learn to ride the cycle for a couple of years, and then you can build a bigger, better cycle. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, all right. Guess that is that. Thank you so much, Lakshmi, for such an insightful and very engaging. It's been very informative, and hopefully you can take a lot of takeaways from this interaction. And
Yes, I want to do one thing before I jump off. Otherwise, my team will just kill me. They think I'm just useless at this. Can I just? They wanted me to share this. So there's a 50% discount. Please sign up on our annual. It's only $800 a year. Costs less than your Swiggy order. But if you want a bulk discount and there are like 10 of you or 15 of you, you can get together and haggle and get it for even cheaper. If you have an entire class that wants to do it, I'm very happy to give it to next to nothing, because for us it's very, very important. This is not really a money-making thing for us, our student sub. It's really to get more and more people to read us and be useful in terms of news literacy and news awareness and all of that. So, and so Dave, I'm telling you as well,
sure.
If you think that, there are enough people, we're happy to just literally give it to people.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of them are going to be very interested in this.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much and have a nice day. It's very wonderful having
you. Thank you all
Thank
for
you,
your
ma'am.
wonderful questions. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Bye. Bye.